Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to our office hour session today, where we will be going over preparing for the holidays. And I know you all might be thinking, wait a sec, it's only September. But the holidays are around the corner, and we know that planning for them needs to happen in advance. Honestly, probably earlier than today. I am Valerie, and I'm on the product marketing team here at Assembled. And before this was in customer success, where I worked with a number of you folks. It's always great to see some familiar faces and meet new ones. I'll pass it along to Adrian to give an intro.
Thanks, Val. And yeah, you saying, oh my gosh, we're already looking at holiday planning now. And sometimes maybe we're already too late for holiday planning in September. So maybe we should have been looking at this over the summer. It just all depends. But for those of you who don't remember me, hopefully a lot of you are return viewers, which is pretty awesome. I am Adrian. I have been doing workforce planning for 14 so odd years now, and I am the workforce manager on the solutions team. Happy to have everybody here and chat about holiday planning, and hopefully we will be ahead of the curve a little bit by the end of this.
Awesome. Well, great to see everybody. Hi. As Valerie also noted, a number of familiar faces in the crowd for me as well. So hello. But I'm Sam from the solutions team here at Assembled, and excited to chat with you guys a little bit about holiday forecasting today. And then in a prior life, I was also the workforce manager for Imperfect Foods, doing all of their scheduling, planning, and analytics using Assembled. So also happy to chat from that perspective as well.
Fantastic. Thank you all. So, today we'll be going over a few exciting areas. Firstly, thinking about planning for the holidays and the essentials between B2B and B2C business models when it comes to forecasting and staffing. Secondly, we'll be going over time off best practices. And thirdly, when you should think about perhaps outsourcing during the holidays. We will then wrap up with a little sneak peek in Assembled, and Sam will also be giving an overview of a session that we'll be scheduling after this to really prepare all you folks with a full holiday forecasting toolkit with your Assembled data. A couple of logistics. Before we begin, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A button in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. This will allow us to get to your questions in a timely manner. And lastly, we'll be sending an emailed recording of the session right after, as well as include a few reference links for you all and a time for our upcoming holiday workshop. I'll pass it along to Sam to kick us off.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Valerie. So just toggling a slide forward here. So as Valerie touched on a little bit earlier, what we found is there's quite a bit of nuance between folks that are on the B2B side of the world or the B2C side of the world for how they'd like to approach holidays. And this has a few drivers behind it, largely just when people are working and when folks will tend to contact you. If you're in a B2B business, there's usually going to be very little to no incoming volume on federal holidays, just because folks likely aren't at their office either to contact you. And it's often highly replicable and follows previous year patterns, so you know what to expect year over year. And on the B2C side of the tent, increased traffic and volume during holidays tends to be very common as people buy up all their gifts for the holiday season and consumer spending ticks up. So things will be forecasting a bit higher than usual. And then, of course, there's the holiday hangover effects to consider, which also may drive up volume in the weeks around the holidays as folks increase their order traffic, and different things may impact order operations like deliveries or potential folks reaching out to ask questions about all their new toys they got during the holidays. And with that, I will kick the ball over to Adrian.
Thanks, Sam. So yeah, we got B2C and B2B. There are some differences there as we go through, but there are some similarities here. And one of them is we've got to figure out what is our plan going to be for this. So let's jump in here and let's start off with what are some of the steps we can take to actually look at what we've seen before and use that to inform what's going to come up this year. Thankfully, we have last year or possibly the last couple years worth of holiday volumes that we can look at. So a couple questions that we want to be asking ourselves, things that we are looking to answer as we're going through here. The first one here, pretty basic, right? How many contacts did we receive? That's something that we should be looking at all the time, not just specifically for these holidays, but it's going to be extra impactful on these specific holidays. And then once we take a look at the amount of volume, whether it was up, whether it was down, spoiler, it's probably up and down depending on the time of the specific days, the specific weeks, or even the time of days. The Super Bowl not being a holiday, or maybe it is a holiday, that is a very specific intraday pattern that you can see in some businesses. So you want to see if there is a clear arrival pattern, and then yes, that volume spikes in the morning. Did it level off? Things of that nature. This happens a lot with things like maybe even Thanksgiving or Christmas or something too, where you might have people are going to start eating later on in the day. So they're out rushing around in the morning, and then it kind of tapers off at the end of the day. And then, they wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning to go for their Black Friday sales the next day because people are maybe a little bit crazy. So just make sure that you are really digging in and just not taking a one size fits all of, oh, my entire week was up, so I can go ahead and use that. Honestly, you want to look down to the specific intervals if you have that ability to do that. And then when you're going through here, make sure that your forecasting is, if we can go back just one slide, make sure forecasting is for the same correct dates. Learn from me, learn from what I have done before where I have used the incorrect dates. Thankfully, something like Thanksgiving plays very nicely because it's always on the same Thursday, and then you have that nice weekend afterwards. And then you can kind of be able to look at what's going to follow after that with the holiday hangover that we'll go into a little bit. But you want to make sure that you're using the exact same dates. It can get tricky if you've got something like a holiday that was on a weekday that is now on a weekend day going forward. But is it important, as we'll go through this, that you're looking at like days, and even if you go back a few years, you're looking at like days. We're turning these into percentage lifts instead of absolute value lifts so that you can apply that forward. And then sometimes if it is that your holiday has moved on to a weekend when it was on a weekday, there's a little bit of YOLOing it that we have to put in there as well. That's the art that goes into workforce. That's not just a science. So we'll touch on those here on the next slides. All right, so compare to your preceding days, your preceding weeks, and honestly, your preceding intervals, whatever level of granularity that would be. This sounds like it's pretty complicated, but in practice, it's not that complicated. It's just that it takes some time because we are doing it over and over again, and we are making sure that we're getting clean data, right? We want to make sure if we have bad data going in, we're going to have bad data coming out. But really go back and look, what was the average week? We're going to talk about at the weekly level, but you can apply it down to daily and intervals from here. What was that average volume right before the holiday? So for Thanksgiving, you can look back at those preceding Thursdays. That's a nice static one there, and see what was our average. As you're going through, use your best judgment. I've gone through plenty of times, and I want to say we're going to use something like maybe 8 to 12 weeks worth of data because we don't have this crazy growth pattern. So these 8 to 12 weeks worth of data, but I'm going to look, what are my averages? Was there a Thursday in there that had some sort of outlier? We've talked about this in previous ones before where you want to drop those outliers out of your data sets. Don't just pull the Thursdays, try to speed through it, say, here's your average. And then all of a sudden you go to your Thanksgiving, you're like, wait, this isn't even, that different because some outlier is pulling down your baseline data set. So look through that. This is where it just takes some time because you're going to be doing that for each of the days and then each of the intervals as well. And it's real simple. You just are going to divide the volume that was received on the holiday and then divide that by the average over the weeks prior to get your holiday multiplier. Except for Erlang, all right, we like to keep our math here in workforce management pretty simple because we have a lot of other things going on. So let the tool do the hard Erlang math. And if there's anything we can't do in the tool, let's make it pretty simple. Get this simple holiday multiplier, then we will use that to apply going forward. So maybe it is specifically your Thanksgiving day is going to be 80% of a normal day, and it's going to be front loaded into those early morning. And then, the afternoon and evening will basically die off to about nothing. Great. Apply those across there. You'll get to your maybe 80% of the day, and you rinse and repeat for your days going on after that. And you just keep using those multipliers. and then note those multipliers and note the volumes and everything that you did, because this will help future Adrian is going to be thankful for past Adrian who actually kept a note of all of these things and showed his work. So when I go back next year and I'm a year older with some more gray hairs, I now know a little bit more. Hey, what was I thinking? And I can maybe make it a little bit easier on myself every time I do this. All right, let's go on to the next one here. Great. So we've done all this work. We're going to look forward through this, but we need to audit and make sure that what we're doing right there. We do YOLO these things a little bit. We have that art that goes with the science. So let's make sure that we're not completely crazy, completely outside of the realm here. Just go back and do the reverse here and check your holiday multiplier with your expected volume to make sure that it is what you were expecting to match up. You're multiplying that times your expected volume, getting your holiday forecast. If all of a sudden we go in there and it's like, oh, wow, this looks like it's going to be way more contacts than I had because there's something else in the forecast that is causing an issue, then you can go back and check that. So just want to make sure here we are looking forward and we're looking at the actual specific day. And then there's also going to be the checking it afterwards to make sure that your holiday forecast lines up. They said it's not rocket science here. You're just going to be applying that multiplier at the different levels and then making sure that you are not going to be a little worried when I'm seeing different multipliers throughout the day. It happens throughout specific days, specific weeks. It's going to change. It's going to go up and down. And then the last one here that I'm going to go over is the holiday hangover, which we have a nice little visual here as well, because we all are familiar with this particular hangover example here. Holidays, they are not just one and done. This is something that I have myself been on the receiving end of not planning for this and kind of having to scramble to adjust. We'll go back to Thanksgiving here, just because it's an upcoming one. It does have some pretty stable dates. You may have the volume drop down on the overall week, with really kind of that Thursday dropping down most of the volume. Then Friday, if you are probably in a B2C business more than B2B, you're going to see volumes increase on that Friday all the way through. We've got all these different names now: Cyber Monday, whatever the weekend in between is called. And then if that extends beyond that, and now you're looking at a holiday that's not just a few hours, it's not just a day or two, it's now over an entire weekend. So it's spanning 2 different weeks. If you're forecasting those different weeks, you have to look at those independently and adjust. But then comes the holiday hangover. If you are a B2C and you are not delivering something that is just specific software, and this does apply to just software as well, you've got shipping, right? It's not just you. It's everybody in the US is hammering UPS. They're hammering FedEx. All these delivery companies are being hammered. So now there's going to be delays. There's going to be additional costs, things that you are going to have to look at. So you kind of look at that hangover, that shadow afterwards, and say, hey, we're really busy on Cyber Monday and Black Friday that weekend. But then 3 days later, all of a sudden our volume ticked up again over the preceding weeks. We already have the historicals pulled that we were using kind of for the week before as our baselines. We can apply that to the week next, and you might see, hey, it's still up. And then if you have the ability to dig in the data and you say, oh, it was actually our where's my package? It was a lot of volume that way. Or, hey, shipping returns, or just troubleshooting, or whatever it may be that you need to check. You don't want to go through and have this really well thought out and successful holiday one, and everyone's patting themselves on the back, coming back from the holiday, and then all of a sudden you go to really bad service levels, and now you're on the other side trying to explain that. These holiday hangovers, they are real. Sometimes they are in that specific day. Sometimes they are weeks later. It's just going to depend on your business and how you are delivering whatever you are making to the customers there. So the overall point there is just don't rely on it being a one and done. Apply the same methods that you've been doing before, looking at those baseline weeks, apply those forward, get your multipliers, apply them out, and explain, hey, now it's a random day that's after a holiday, but it's because of this link to the hangover from before. So lots to go over there. Not a perfect science, but it's definitely something that can be done. And the better you get at it and the closer you get, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to be closer so that you were preparing for it. Maybe you have some of those other levers of overtime, things like that, but that you have made sure that you're not walking blind into some of these kind of situations here. All right, and I think we have a chance for some questions, and I believe Val may have thrown another poll out there as well. Have there been any questions that have popped up so far?
We always love learning about how you heard about today's session. So just sent out a little fun poll for y'all to engage with.
Yeah, and thanks everybody. I see that we actually got a number of responses. Looks like the overwhelming amount of people here might be workforce managers, but it's great to see that there is a nice variance in the amount of people hopefully enjoying these webinars, at least coming to them. All right, doesn't look like there's any questions. Sam, you want to take it away?
Yeah, will do. So moving on kind of from the staffing or from the forecasting angle into the staffing angle. So once we have that lovely forecast built up that Adrian's kind of taken us on a grand tour through, the real crux of the use case for that great forecast is being able to translate that into the perfect staffing for the holiday. So again, there are some things to consider depending on if you're B2B or B2C, because in the B2B world, there's a good chance you'll likely be fully closed on federal holidays, or a lot of the other companies you might be interacting with will be, and with on-call emergency teams as the exception for certain issues. And then on the B2C side of the house, you'll likely still need staffing, a possibly skeleton team, or reduced hours of operation, or perhaps for some folks, even an increased team, depending on what your personal volume trends look like. And then adherence and other metrics might, of course, be a bit lower than expected, but don't cut staffing fully, leave a buffer. And you can add in extra shrinkage here and there as something to pull back if needed as well.
Yep. And on that one, Sam, I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in here just a little bit. This is one that, once again, I have been burned on this myself. So I'd love to give my personal stories. That, you can have the secondhand cringe from my side of doing this wrong in the past. That extra shrinkage is really great. It's a little bit of that balance of, during the holidays, shrinkage can be really expensive because you might be paying that additional rate, but it is a good time to catch up. Sometimes it just really is that we have been so far behind. This is the best time to catch up on these needed trainings, security trainings, things like that. And it really does give that lever of, okay, we can yank those back if it does get busier than what we had planned for. And you probably heard me use something like, only go 80% of the way. In a ton of my sites are saying, only go 80%, do 80%, 80 to 90%. Same thing here. If you're going to cut your staffing down, maybe cut it down only by 80%, like Sam was saying. Now, don't go the whole, just do maybe 80% or so. Gives you that buffer. People are going to be upset. I was one of these people to have to come in and work on a holiday. But man, if you are able to then say, hey, it's slow, you can go ahead and go home when they expected to be there for the holiday. It may not be the best, but you'll probably win some friends there too by saying, oh, I was supposed to work for the next 4 hours. You saying I can go home? Like, it doesn't always have to be a bad thing. You can turn it into a good thing as well there.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for the added color there and the personal angle. Very helpful. So as Adrian was noting, there's a few different levers at play here for the staffing side of the conversation. And when you open up kind of these holiday staffing decisions, something that's really important to consider is having a plan in place with clear expectations you can share with your employees for how staffing that holiday is going to work and what they can expect as far as time off goes. Because as I'm sure everybody here is already very in the know on, holidays are also very popular times for wanting to cut loose and spend a little bit of time outside of work as well. So managing that time off side of the house is also super important. So a few kind of data points to keep in mind as you're building out what your system is going to look like and what you can share with employees. It's really important to think about, are there going to be any blackout dates for days that folks could request time off for? Are there incentives for working holiday shifts? As Adrian noted in his example, that can always, of course, sweeten the pot a little bit and help get people rallied for those tough to fill shifts. And then how will those requests be prioritized for that infinitely possible pile of time off requests that will come in? And then, of course, will there be any same day flexibility allowed? As Adrian also noted, a really popular mechanism for if folks do have to work for these undesirable shifts is letting folks go on kind of a rolling voluntary time off basis as the traffic needs dictate, because you might be able to let folks go as the day continues on, just depending on how the traffic pans out. So all of these are things to consider and things to be sure to share with your team ahead of time. And then, of course, be prepared for more people to request off than can be potentially approved, and have a system in place ahead of time for how you're going to triage those requests. Of course, there's as many different ways of handling this as there are businesses. It really can be a very unique process, but some of the most popular ones would be a first come, first serve model. And the nice thing about this is it kind of ticks the most fair boxes a bit, because it's just purely based on when the request came in. And then, of course, there's also seniority or performance-based models, which can be really nice for giving an added bonus to your top performers or people that have been there the longest, and being more fair in that sense. And then, of course, there's also plenty of more unique options as well. Like some other models I've seen teams adopt would be letting everybody choose potentially between like Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Christmas Eve as their guaranteed day off is one way I've seen folks do that. And then they're potentially going to work the others. There's plenty of room for flexibility with the different models that people adopt, but very important you have a plan in place for how those requests are triaged one way or another. And then, of course, there's also always the option of considering outsourcing holiday coverage to give your in-house team an extra relaxing holiday, as we'll dive in on a little bit more in the next slides.
Yep, great. And before we move on from this too, I love adding some personal anecdotes because I've been through this a lot. As those of you who hopefully also attended some of our other webinars, such as the capacity planning one, we know that getting this information really far in advance is super helpful. For one, on some of these time off requests, there's just system inabilities to not be able to request time off without having something planned out. So you might be like, okay, we know we're going to give people some time off, Christmas off, but unless you start to have some of these plans that are going to be informed by the adjustments you make to your forecast here, people can't start to request off. And right, I keep saying people instead of agents, because at the end of the day, we are working with people who have to, they're in the same, mercy of we are to holiday, to like airlines trying to get that booked, to hotels, to trying to get their family to coordinate things like that. So the more time that you can get this done in advance, the better. I'll say here at like T-Mobile, when it comes to like this first come first serve, this is a big one. At T-Mobile, we would actually have some very basic, just schedule shells, so start and stop times for lunch, put in pretty much at the beginning of the year for the rest of the year. Now, there was a big asterisk there of you may not be working that specific shift. There's probably going to be 1 to 2 schedule realignments between now and then, but you can go ahead and start requesting things off. And first come, first serve is the route that we went there, specifically to try to, not just have your seniority be something that it's really hard to overcome seniority. People have to leave, right? You really can't jump any sort of queue there. They have to go somewhere else. Your performance-based as well is an interesting one because, if you're stuck on a really bad shift or not getting your holidays, it can be really tough to bring your performance up just because you're not happy. So we went with the first come, first serve model there, and then actually open it up in different tranches as well. So there would be the morning, the mid, and like the overnight ones, so that you don't have basically the people who just happen to be scheduled at the time that we click the button or the system processed, getting the benefit of like, oh, okay, we were able to request all the time off just because I happened to be in the office, versus other people not having the chance. So we did a good job, and it's something that I would suggest of when you are going to open up these dates and say for the next holiday, be very transparent about we're going to open these up on these dates. We're splitting it up if you can with specifics so not everybody can take it all at once. And then which model you're going with. If you're going with first come, first serve, maybe as Sam was saying, you're doing some seniority ones, or you're doing a mix there as well. It's kind of be transparent and give that all information out there. And then once again, maybe only go 80% of the way, maybe even go less to start off with and open it up again later on. It's much easier to add things as you go than to try to reel it back. Ask me how I know how to, ask people to cancel stuff last minute because the iPhone or something got moved. It's not a fun time. So just some other little learn from Adrian, learn from his pain, and try not to have to go through that yourself.
Thank you so much for the added color there, Adrian. I don't know about the audience, but I definitely felt the secondhand cringe from that. So we'll definitely be careful about all of these common mistakes and make sure that everybody knows to continue to make sure that these things are available well ahead of time. And also, I think it's a really important call out that all of these decisions that you can make with confidence rely on that initial forecast. So having that done as far in advance as possible will really set you and your team up for success and making sure that everybody has clarity on time off.
Yes, 100%.
Cool. So with that, would love to open up the floor for questions.
And we would also love to, while this question period is happening, learn a bit more about when your team starts planning for the holidays. So sending another poll your way. We'll give a little readout once we collect the results.
This could be a really good one. I'm excited to see when people start planning on it. No judgment here. This is a judgment-free zone. We're not going to judge you if it is just now holiday planning or not, but it is interesting to see there.
Absolutely. And yes, as you can notice on the bottom answer choice, we have YOLO, which means don't really have a process in place and you go with the flow.
We'll make it work. All right. I don't know if there's any questions coming in, so we can jump over to the outsourcing part here.
Awesome. So continuing on forward here. So as we mentioned on one of our prior slides, outsourcing is one great option for planning around these very volatile times of year. So there's a few different things to keep in mind about this. So temporary outsourcing that depends on business needs can be a really useful tool in your toolkit. To outsource seasonal employees, that way your core in-house team has kind of the same consistent hours going through this time period, and being able to rely on that other team through a BPO for those volatile holiday spikes. And of course, BPOs are much more suited to swing up or down very quickly for staffing needs to reduce backlog, just because, of course, they can move different agents to different campaigns that they happen to be working on throughout their company versus just the siloed volume that happens inside of your own company, which of course can be trickier to scale up or scale down quickly. So BPOs can definitely be a great partner in that. And then, of course, shutting your internal operation down and having outsourcing open is also another option in here. So there's this kind of idea of having a mix of options with having your in-house crew and your BPO simultaneously working during this seasonal time. But some folks do also choose to shut down their internal operation and leave outsourcing open during the holidays, just that way their internal team can get a little bit of extra R&R and just allow folks to really relax during the holiday. And of course, on the workforce management side of the house, that eliminates the need for PTO bidding and having to kind of make tough calls there as well. And then, of course, finally, there's changing your hours of operation during the holidays, which can be a really great use case for partnering with the BPO, because it allows you to provide high quality support with internal agents potentially during your core hours of operation, while allowing BPOs to take up any extended hours that are coming in through the holiday spikes, which allows your team to, of course, have that kind of continued center of gravity stability internally, while still servicing those spikes in demand as needed.
Yep. Yeah, great. Sam, this is awesome. And Sam said a really key part there too, of like the different campaigns that BPOs will use, which I think is super key. That specific, this is why you have a BPO, right? Is you have them to handle all these kind of logistics and things like that. And this is a great one to have them be able to move people in and out of different campaigns, depending on your particular agreement. Not every company I've worked with allowed the BPO agents to work on different campaigns just for security reasons, things like that. But that does mean that you don't have to worry about, okay, if we need them to ramp up for the holidays and then just like drop down to almost nothing the next day, it's not like they're going to be out of a job. We don't want that to happen to people. It's that they're just going to move on to the other one. Maybe somebody that is more B2B, who's, everybody's waking up and it's the first of the year and all these companies have to start ordering their things again, and they can just shift over to there. So great things to be able to utilize the BPOs for. as our friend Cal is pointing out here, though, probably the biggest caveat to this is you've got to have, I would say it's more than it's best to have, like you have to have a BPO agreement already in place before you start to look at one of these. If you're kind of behind the 8 ball already and looking at holiday planning now, it would be a Herculean effort to also add on getting a BPO in, and then having the confidence in their quality and things of that nature before you're able to launch into this. The worst thing is, and I'm going to say trusting the best intentions of others, the worst thing would be to have a BPO who just started and they just didn't know your product in and out. So they weren't able to provide the best service, and then you're shut down, and then you come back to a different type of holiday hangover that you weren't expecting, which was, I didn't get the service I expected. And so now you come back into that and everybody's like, whoa, what happened there? So just lots of different things to look at here. We did this all the time at other companies. So at Stripe, we would do the option where we would just shut down. Stripe would actually be completely closed for a little over a week. So it was great. Shut everything down. You obviously had your engineering teams and those, the skeleton ones we talked about that would be around for your on-call. And then the BPOs would handle everything. This was great when we worked with BPOs that were outside of the US and didn't have all the same holidays, because they're able to get those hours. They might have a little bit of a higher rate that they negotiate for those hours. It was great internally as well. There was no sort of bidding, things of that nature. Worked super well. And the T-Mobile, we actually did the specific changing the hours of operation and would crunch down to just the core hours. So this is another one where we talked about people maybe going home part of the way through the day. If you didn't cut all the way down to the bone, you're able to let them go afterwards. Well, this is kind of that, but just in pre-planning there, where you say, hey, you know what, you're only going to come in and maybe we're only going to be open from 9 to 5 that day. And we only want you to work half of the day, maybe the whole day, something like that. And the BPOs will take over. At that point, during your core hours, you will still make sure that you are, I don't like to say providing the best support, because the BPOs are actually getting a lot better these days, but you're providing the in-house support. You can have the overlap there of your BPO starting to come online, so there's not a harsh transition, and just go from there. We did this all the time at T-Mobile. There was some nuance there because there were different sites internally across the country. So you could have like the East Coast ones shut down earlier, and then the West Coast would still be online, and then BPOs pick up over there. But super key there. The temporary outsourcing one, a little bit harder to do because you do want to have these people have knowledge of the business, but you see this a lot in like retail or something. You know, outsourcing does not have to be just the call center agent who's in another country. Outsourcing is all different types of work. And you see that sometimes at even stores just needing to stock up and change, and they bring people in for a little bit and move them out. So don't be afraid to approach these options. Obviously, after, as Sam was saying, after you've already come up with the forecast and it's informed your decision, that's key. This is probably the most powerful one that you can use. This is really the first time we've kind of suggested this, as we've been really helping to build out the ability to work with BPOs and be able to measure their performance in the tool and go forward. But this is definitely the one, if you wanted to have kind of your cake and eat it too, you put in the work now, and 2022, Adrian's putting in the work to get this BPO set up and everything. 2023 and so on, Adrian is going to be super happy that 2022 one did that for them. So really powerful one here. Hopefully this spikes up some questions here. If not, we can jump on to the next part. Don't know if any questions came in while I was rambling on there.
And in addition, we also have another poll for you while you all are thinking of questions around how many BPOs your team uses. And again, we will read out the results after we collect them. If you all are curious on how our last poll performed, which was when does your team start planning for the holidays, 53% of folks chose August, 24% chose now, 12% chose July, and around 6% chose first half of this year. We also had one person choose YOLO as well, and that is exactly why we are here for you, to give you a bit of pointers to start off.
Yeah. Kudos to those of you doing July or even the first half. That is great to see. August and now, right? What is that saying? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago or today. So right, we're getting into it. So it's great that we're doing that too. And YOLO, I hope that your liver makes it through the holiday season, because it could be a little rough, but you'll make it through.
Absolutely. Well, as we talked about in a lot of the other slides, it really all boils down to that initial forecast and planning ahead of time and having these conversations in the weeks ahead. So super exciting stuff. And I believe next up we have an assembled teaser trail with Val.
Yes. So we intentionally are keeping this very short as a teaser to have you all excited and ready to learn more with Sam in our upcoming holiday workshop. But a really cool feature that we have in Assembled where you can essentially apply this holiday multiplier as well as take out any peaks or spikes that might not be representative of future volume is in our forecast configurations panel. A number of folks in the audience may already be using this, but this is a really great way to apply that multiplier once you have calculated it. And Adrian and Sam went through some of the mechanics there directly to your forecast in Assembled. So we'll be actually going through a lot more of the nuances with not only this, but like forecasting overall, time off, and more in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for that session.
Awesome possum. So just closing us out here with a little bit more detail about that upcoming session as well. So be looking out for an email in your inbox after this session, inviting you guys to a very special holiday special, if you will, workshop with both Adrian and I, where we'll go over a lot of the information we did here, but in a much more interactive way, where we'll actually get the chance to dive in with your real data and give you guys personalized holiday toolkits for your business coming out of that workshop. So be looking out for a special email with an invite to that. So that way we can jam more directly with you guys. We're all really excited to get the chance to talk with you more directly. And then, of course, you guys are all welcome to swing by our office hours anytime. As a reminder, we host those several times a week at a variety of different time zone convenient spots for folks to just slide in with any questions they have about the product, workforce management, the support industry, anything like that, even just to swing by and talk shop. So do feel free to book time with any of our upcoming office hours as well if you'd like to swing by, and we'll be sure to pop the link for that in the follow-up email as well as the chat below.
Fantastic. Just released a poll as well to wrap us up around a topic that you would like us to cover in our upcoming webinars. If there is one that you would like that we actually don't have in the answer choices, feel free to reach out to us, even write to us in the chat. We are always listening and we would love to hear all of your ideas. And in our follow-up email as well, we will be including resources to all that we discussed today, slides, the recording, as well as a fresh off the presses BPO webinar that actually walks you through end-to-end how to evaluate the BPO landscape, choose a BPO that best fits the needs of your team, thinking about the different billing models within the various BPOs and evaluation and success metrics. So we'll be linking that as well. And you can also chat with our team as well if you have any questions on choosing BPOs. I know our partnerships team and a number of folks on the success side have some great recommendations there. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks. Bye.